Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to this week's Productive Agent Podcast. My name is Tony Ruiz. I'm the founder and host of the Productive Agent Podcast and Facebook group. Today, I'm joined by another great producer here in the San Antonio area. Please welcome Marisela Vara.
Hi, everyone.
Awesome. So Mari has been in the real estate business since she was born, pretty much. She's been in the real estate 19 years right out of high school. She was 12 years in property management and is 7 years in the real estate sales side. She is an EXP agent with Boundless.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, you have so much experience that I can't wait to dive into what you've experienced, what you've learned. And I know that the listeners are going to get a lot of value out of this. So tell us a little bit about your background and where you're from.
So I'm born and raised in San Antonio. I went to Robert E. Lee High School.
Yeah.
I've actually been working since I was 15.
Yeah.
I've shared this before with, I was on another podcast, and so I feel like I'm repeating it. But yeah, good. So for those of you that don't know my history, I've been working since I was 15. And then right out of high school, I got a big girl job.
Yeah.
Started working at the mall.
So when you were 15, what was your very first job?
Oh, my first job, Dairy Queen.
Dairy Queen, yeah. I started working very similar. I think I was about 15, maybe 14. My very first job was a Little League umpire.
Little League umpire.
Yeah.
Where's that at?
So I was at McAllister Park playing baseball.
Okay. You were an actual umpire. Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
So I was doing small little kids, T-ball games. Yeah. And
On the weekends?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, but it was cool. It was had some cash in my pocket, and then I go blow it on clothes and just.
Same.
Yeah.
My mom's like, all right, you started working. You can buy your own clothes now. And the minute I would get paid, I'd go shopping, and then I'd have to wait the next 2 weeks. And back then, I think I started, it was $5.25 an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Come a long ways.
I did that. I worked at HEB. I was a bagger at HEB. And then I worked at Alamo Cafe. But all of this stuff is not about me. I don't know why I got sidetracked there.
That's okay.
But yeah, so you started working early.
Early, yeah.
Tell us about your first big girl job right out of high school.
Yeah, I started applying everywhere, and I got hired at the Limited. I don't know if anybody remembers the Limited, but it's a women's clothing store. It was affiliated with Express and Victoria's Secret. And I actually started as a seasonal sales. I don't even remember what they called them back then, but just a sales associate. And I started for the holidays, and I guess my work ethic, they liked it. I brought in a lot of revenue, and they brought me on as a full-time sales agent. I think I was there for about a year, and then I got promoted to management.
Well, I think you're a natural salesperson just because you're very bubbly and you talk well and you communicate well. Going back to when we first met, we were like, how do we meet? I'm not sure. But we just kind of wrapped up our accountability group here at Fidelity National Title, by the way.
Great
so we're, but we just started talking, and then I remember leaving one of our classes, and we stood there for an hour.
Shane walks out. He's like, "Y'all still out here?"
Yeah. So you're obviously good at communication, and that helps you in all aspects of all jobs, really.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to say that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say. Mm-hmm.
Well, so you worked at North Star Mall Limited. Mm-hmm. You had a couple other jobs, but before you got into real estate, what other jobs did you have?
Well, so going back to when I was working at the Limited. After being there for so many years, I would say about 2.5 years there, I had my set clientele. I had my clients that would come in, and I would work with them, and I built really good rapport. And one girl in particular, she said, "You should come work for my company." And at that point, I was kind of already getting burnt out with retail because the hours are so long, and you feel like you're there all the time. And so she brought it to my attention, and I got the information, and I said, sure, why not?
Sure.
And I went and I applied, and I got the position as a leasing consultant for property management for an apartment complex.
Okay.
And then I came back, and I told my boss that I got hired, and she was like, what? You can't leave? And I said, well, I want to try something new. And she's like, okay, what if you just keep your position as a part-time you can be a key holder part-time. And I said, okay, I can do that. I didn't have any kids.
Right.
I was young, and I was like, why not? I would keep my discount, because I had a 40% discount over there. And so I said,
you
okay.
like to buy clothes.
I do like to shop, yeah. So it worked out. And I started doing property management as a leasing consultant. I loved it. I did work for various companies. They all have their own culture and their vibes and the different types of properties that you work at.
What do you like about that position? You said you love that position.
I'm naturally, like you said earlier, I'm a people person.
Yeah.
And so I always met people. And, and at that time, I was like 19 years old, almost 20. I was about 20 years old. And I'm helping people get into a home. It wasn't a home that they were buying, but it was a home, for their family. And I really enjoyed that part. Sometimes some of the applicants were, their credit wasn't the best and they were having a hard time getting into an apartment. So I actually build relationships with other apartment locators.
Okay.
And so then if I couldn't help them, I'd refer them to an apartment locator who could help them. Yeah. So I just really liked that business. It's just meeting different people, having coworkers, and the schedule was a lot better.
Yeah.
I did have to work every other weekend, but that was okay.
That's not too bad.
No, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you did that for 12 years. You were enjoying it. At that time, did you get married at that time? Have kids?
Yeah. So in 2000, I did end up quitting because I had my daughter back in 2008. And during that time where I was on maternity leave, my sister actually worked at a granite company.
Okay.
And I think my daughter was about a month old. And my sister calls me and she's like, hey, I need your help. And I'm like, what? And she was like, one girl quit on me and I just need another body here. Can you help? And I'm like, okay, fine. So I went and I started helping my sister. Sales, I was selling granite and flooring. I was also helping, clients that were in the middle of building a home with like D.R. Horton and other builders. And so they needed help with designing their kitchens and their bathrooms. And so I started doing that. And it was only supposed to be just temporary. And then I stayed for, I want to say like 2 years.
Okay.
I was there for 2 years.
Yeah.
And which it was really cool, but it was also a lot. You were outside a lot during the summer. I was so dark. I was so dark, yeah. And then I went back into property management after that.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah, so it was a cool experience.
Said you sold Tim Duncan
I did.
His granite.
His master bathroom.
That's pretty cool.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I mean, he was only there for 5 minutes. He's like, what am I looking at? And I'm like, this is going to be your counters. And he just looked and he's like, okay, cool. And well, it was funny because when I was primarily helping his wife at that time.
Right.
She was so friendly. She was super nice. She was smelling my hair. She's like, oh my God, I love your shampoo. And she was just really nice. I had no idea who she was at that time, And she was with her contractor, who at that time I thought was her husband.
Okay.
And she's like, well, I need my husband to come and look at the slabs of granites with, the whole sheet. And they had like 6 because their bathroom was huge. And so I had the guys lay them all out. And she's like, oh, I'm calling my husband right now. And then she's like, can you give him the directions? So she gives me the phone and I'm over here talking to Tim Duncan. And I didn't even know it was him. And I'm like giving him the directions. I'm like, yeah, just bring your truck out to the side. Just park right there since you're not going to be here very long. And I'm talking to her. My back's facing him. And she's like, oh, there he is. I turn around and it's freaking Tim Duncan. I look at her and I'm like, really? You couldn't tell me your husband was Tim Duncan? And I was so nervous, but I was like, just stay calm. And he walks up and I'm like, hi, Marisela. And he's like, hi, Tim. And very, very quiet. He was in basketball shorts and slides. And that's when he was like, what am I looking at? I'm like, this is going to be our bathroom counter. And he's like, okay, cool. And then I give him a sample and he's like, what's this for? And I'm like, so you could take it home, see it under your lighting, compare it to your cabinets. He's like, this is her job. I started laughing. And I was like, okay, well, I guess he likes it. And she was like, okay. And then he left. So it was like 5 minutes.
That's cool though.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So you did those jobs for a few years. Yeah. And then what triggered you to get into the real estate sales?
Okay. Well, so when I went back into property management, you know how I told you that I built relationships with apartment locators?
Yeah. One
in particular, her name's Shanae.
Okay.
She loved to work with me. I was working at an apartment complex called the Ravinia. And it's right off 281 and 1604. Anyway, she would always bring me coffee, you know, because I always helped her clients. We tag team. And she said, I think you should get your real estate license. Never crossed my mind. I was like, okay. You know, I went through one ear and out the other. I wasn't like, I just said, oh, you know, okay. Like she tells me, you know, you have to take classes and, you know, where to go. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll think about it. I'll consider it. And I think like 2 weeks later, she was serious. She brings me the booklet.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, hey, I'm serious. You should get your license. You will be really good at it. So my intention was to get my license to become an apartment locator.
Okay.
And so then I started taking my classes, and it took me like 4 years. I did 2 on the weekends, like 1 year, and then I finished the rest of the 4 like in another year. And so anyway, at my last class, my husband kept telling me, he was like, well, and so in between that, I did end up getting married. Right after I got my license, actually. But my fiance at that time, I told him, this girl came up to me. She thinks I should get my real estate license. And he's like, yeah, you should do it. You would be good at it. And he's like my hype man, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, but I'm thinking for to be an apartment locator. And he was like, no, do sales. And I was like, sales. And a part of me was like, you know, all I've known is, you know, salary pay or, you know, hourly pay.
Right.
And then, you know, just thinking about, commission only. Like, I don't know that. I have a daughter and, you know, I was so scared about just commission based only, you know, not knowing when your next paycheck's going to come. And that was like a huge, and I think that's why it took me so long to do the classes. 2 years is a long time.
Well, I think I took a class or 2 and then I was kind of thinking about it, but I wasn't real serious. And then it like expired. And like I had to like re-sign up. So like
your classes expired?
Yeah, like I went through the CE shop and I was doing everything online and I didn't realize that they expired at a certain point. So I was like, oh shit, I have to buy the whole thing again. So similar. It took me like a year, but like once I was like, okay, I'm doing this.
Yeah,
like I
when
actually
you made your
resigned.
mind up, I
was like, okay, I got to knock this out.
And that was me too. I resigned and then I finished the classes because I was like, there's no going back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because even when I tried to quit my job, I got a raise. It was like,
they want to keep you.
I was like, is God telling me to stay here? You know, it's like trying to listen for all the signs. And so, but yeah, I think at that point I was already kind of like done. And my husband was telling me, you know, just do it. Don't be afraid.
Pretty much you were coached into doing it by this apartment locator. And then your husband
and then my husband's over there in the
support,
back, like do it.
Yeah.
But I didn't commit to doing sales. I was like, no, I'm just going to do the apartment locating because that's what I know. Right. You know, I was more comfortable with doing that. So I took on my last class, I think it was I can't remember the class. It wasn't even one of the 6s. It was the one that you take. It's like a refresher. They go over all the like a recap of all the classes.
Okay, it's probably like some kind of review.
Yeah, it's like a I don't remember the name of it, but
prep. I think
like
it might
a prep
have been
course. Yes,
prep course.
the prep course.
Yeah,
and so, you know, I went to Champions and I remember this broker came and he was talking about his company. And in that moment, I think it was during lunch, in that moment, I don't remember what exactly he said, but the light went off and I was like, I'm going to do sales. So I came home that day and I told my husband, I was like, okay, I'm going to do sales. And he was like, yes, you'll do great. And I was like, all right. And that was like, I want to say December of 2015.
What was your husband doing at the time?
He's in sales and he was doing security alarms. He's an authorized dealer for Brinks and ADT and all the other alarm companies. But yeah, he's since I've been with him, he's been in sales. Okay. So for him, it was, you know, and I've seen the growth, you know, so he was like, we'll be fine. I got your back. Don't worry. And I was like, all right. Yeah. And
well, it's super important that you have somebody by your side that's supportive.
Yes, the support. Because if you're doing it on your own, like completely on your own as a single parent, it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah, absolutely.
It could be very, very intimidating. Yeah. You know, because what they teach you in real estate school is not actual real estate.
I don't think I've applied any of that.
This is what you don't do to get sued.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it doesn't talk about how to get the business, what to do once you get the business.
There's so much more to learn, you know? So I think that was the fear, you know, of it holding me back. I mean, sometimes I wish I would have done it sooner, but what do? You know, you just keep going.
You are where you are, and you just keep going
This
forward.
is just how it was meant to play out, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So when you you got your license, and then you obviously had to pick a brokerage, and I'm guessing
It was that man that went in there, Joe.
Okay.
I don't remember how to pronounce his last name. Rosinski?
Okay.
It's a unique last name.
Is he still around?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Every now and then I get an email from him.
Come back.
Yeah. I almost did, actually.
Oh.
But yeah, I went, I joined their brokerage. It was Rigel Realty. It was a smaller firm. I think at that time they had about 35 realtors at their brokerage. They had their own office, and I liked it because I felt like in that moment as a new agent, you have so many questions. You have, you know, you get your first deal and you're like, oh my God, what do I do? You know, like, am I doing this right? You know, I don't want to mess up.
Right.
And they were always available. Like I'd walk into the office. I'm like, hey, are you busy? Like, no, come on in. And I'm like, okay, I wrote this contract. This is where we're at. She'd look at it, the broker, and, you know, kind of guide me and coach me and explain things so that I understood and I felt confident with the transaction. And Joe did, you know, classes for us too, like teaching us how to do a CMA. But man, in the beginning, learning how to do a CMA was so confusing.
Yeah. I remember when I first wrote my first contract, that was like probably the one and only migraine I've ever had in my life. I don't really suffer from migraine, but I was so stressed out about getting it right that I was just like,
like writing up the actual offer?
Yeah, writing up a contract. And I was just
I
like,
literally read every page.
God.
I'm like, okay, so this is this and that.
It took me so long. Yeah, I was just like, oh my God. Is this how it's going to be all the time? But yeah, when you're new, you
I just
don't
breeze
know.
through it.
Yeah, you're like, check. Yeah,
it's like autofill.
Yeah, for sure. So how long were you there?
At Rigel, I was there for about a little over a year.
Okay.
Yeah. And my husband's the one that encouraged me to go bigger.
Okay.
In that moment, he's like, I think you're a big fish in a little pond and you need to spread your wings out a little bit and see what other opportunities are out there.
Where'd you go from there?
I felt so loyal. I felt so badly because I built that relationship with them, you know, and I was very appreciative of them helping me, and, you know, I grew a lot from them. Well, I think at that moment they were like, you want to start teaching some classes? And I'm like, no, I want the agents that are top producers to teach me. Like, I'm a new one, you know? But that's when my husband's like, you need to go to Keller Williams. And I was like, okay, let's see what they got. And actually, my husband encouraged me, but then, do you know Glenn Bain?
Who's that?
Glenn Bain. He primarily works in Bernie.
Okay, no.
And he's at the Bernie office. And so I actually joined this networking group. It's called BNI. Yeah. And so a year into the business, I did BNI. And it's a referral networking group.
You mentioned that. Let's go a little bit deeper on that. Okay. BNI. Talk to us about BNI.
So basically, BNI, it's a group of people that you meet with once a week. Of course, they have their annual dues that you got to pay. And you can only have one profession in each category in that group. So you can only have one electrician, one plumber, one realtor. You can have a commercial and a residential realtor. You know, any type of career field, but could only be one. Yeah. And so you basically meet and you network with these people. You get to know them. You build relationships with them. I actually did a commercial for one of the plumbers. It was Blue Frog Plumbing.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah. And so, yeah, you just meet with these people. You build relationships with them and you pass each other business. Okay. Because, you know, if you think about it, everybody knows at least 100 people. Yeah. You know, if you're born and raised and you're still in your hometown, but you know, with all those people, conversations come up and they're looking for some type of, you know, a plumber or an electrician, and you're like, oh, I have somebody for you, and you come to your meeting the next week and be like, hey, I passed this referral to so and so, and I learned a lot from that too. I was definitely out of my comfort zone because you have to talk. Yeah. Like our group was big. I had to talk in front of like 35 people. Yeah. And I swear I sounded like I was going to cry every single time because I was so nervous. I hated it, but I did it for like 3 years.
You were afraid to talk? That's surprising.
Well, in front of people, like you put me in a crowd and everybody's staring at you and it's quiet, you know, it made me so nervous. And then you have to do a presentation, a 10-minute presentation about you and your company and what you do. And, your business.
Definitely helps you grow. It sounds like
I grew a lot
Yeah.
with BNI, and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the same because everything was virtual. So then I gave up my seat, and I regret it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gonna get back in it?
I want to.
Yeah.
I want to. Yeah. But
Cool.
my seat's filled with somebody else's seats.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for them to give it up.
Right.
Yeah, but that's so Joe, the same guy that was at that last class that I was telling you about, he's the one that told me about BNI. And my husband was already in BNI. I think that's the reason why I got that seat, because I was actually competing with Dallas Pipes. You know who he is?
I've heard that name. Yeah.
He was trying to get that seat too, because it was Glenn's wife who couldn't fill it anymore. She got too busy. And my husband, he tells me, he's like, hey, Amy's she's not gonna renew her seat. You should go. And I went that next Wednesday, because real estate, that one's a hot seat.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
I win, and I think it's because my husband was already in the group that I got it. But hey, I'm not complaining.
Sometimes it's who you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
I felt bad for Dallas. I was like, sorry, Dallas.
So what was your experience when you went to Keller Williams City View, the big brokerage?
Yeah, leaving from the smaller one.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, I felt like a girl in high school, her first day in 8th grade. Because it's so big, it's like City View has different rooms and different floors, and it was awesome. I met a lot of people there, and everybody was so welcoming and, very chatty.
It's good culture.
Very good culture.
Yeah.
Very good culture. I learned a lot. Like, they had so many classes, and Jim. Remember Jim?
Which one?
The one that passed away. Was it?
I don't think I know him.
Yeah, he taught me a lot. I would go to the office all the time, and I would, get my marketing materials ready for my open houses. And he's like, what you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm getting ready for my open house. And he's like, what you got there? And so he'd come in. He was always so snazzy in his little suits and, like older gentleman, super nice guy. And so he'd give me a lot of pointers, and he's like, hey, this is what you need to bring. And he'd give me like data to talk about. And I'm like, oh, you're so smart. He's like, I know a little something. So anyway, he taught me a lot too. And so he would motivate me, and people like to share their ideas. They're not afraid to ask, like, what are you doing? I used to make door hangers for the open houses, and I put them on all the doors around the neighborhood and stuff. So I'm like, oh, I bought this at Office Depot, and I tell them what I'm doing, and they're like, oh, wow. And so, and then of course the classes, and then they had phone duty at that time. And
how'd you like that?
I liked it. It
Really?
was interesting, because the way they did phone duty at that time was like a 2-hour window, and you'd have to go to the monthly meeting to sign up for it.
Okay.
And when you sign up for it, you take a window, and they go in rotation.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I would get like 3 or 4 days. I would get 3 or 4 windows, and I'd just show up and take some calls. And, obviously there's signed calls.
Right.
And there's a lot of agents, or at that time there was a lot of agents with Keller Williams. So I knew that my phone would be ringing. And I did get a couple of buyers from doing that.
Yeah.
So it gave me a little bit of that confidence, like taking calls, being a little bit more interactive with people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked it.
Well, take us back to kind of so far, your first brokerage, and now KW City View. How did you grow your business? We talked a little bit about, the training and the classes that you take have nothing to do with growing your business.
Right. No, that's just for your personal growth.
Right. So, so talk to us, like, how did you grow your business? How did you grow your database? How did you get you off the ground?
Honestly, I did everything that was uncomfortable.
Okay.
Like, everybody in the classes they're telling you what to do.
Yeah.
They're telling you why they're successful. Yeah. And it's things you don't want to do. Who wants to go door knocking? Who wants to hold open houses? I didn't want to do that, but I did it. Honestly, I didn't have a lot of money for marketing, and I was looking for all the least expensive things that didn't really cost a lot. I mean, open houses are free, but you are spending money on balloons and signage and, cookies. I didn't do anything extravagant.
Right.
I always just provided water and cookies, and then of course balloons. Balloons nowadays are expensive. It's like $25 for a dozen now.
What?
Yes.
Is this helium?
Back then, yes.
Okay, because they have to be helium.
Yeah, because it grabs attention.
Yeah. I've never done the balloons, but obviously the signs, and you can reuse the signs, and as long as they're not stolen, sometimes that happens.
Right. And so I did purchase in that networking group that I was telling you about. we had a marketing sign person.
Okay.
And so I bought some signs from them. I think I bought like, I want to say like 30 signs.
Wow.
Yeah, for the open houses.
Yeah. But it's still open houses. Obviously, they cost you a little bit of money to get signs and balloons and all that.
Yeah.
But it's still one of the least expensive things to do.
generate leads. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just loved it because like we're similar personalities. We get in front of somebody, we usually connect with people,
Oh, yeah.
and it's like, oh well, yeah.
I feel
you build
like
rapport.
Yes, and I feel like honestly, my background with doing property management, because when you're a leasing consultant, somebody walks in the door and you're like, "Hey, how are you?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm looking for a 2-bedroom apartment. What are your rates?" And you go over the floor plan with them. So it's very similar to when somebody walks in, like, "Hey, are you shopping for yourself? Or you live in the area?" You're trying to get information out of them.
Yeah.
And you're giving them a tour, and when in the apartment industry, it's like, if there's a rebuttal or something that they're not, like, oh, it doesn't have a microwave, well, you'd be like, oh, well, there's counter space here. You come back with, a rebuttal
Right.
to overcome the objection. And they taught us that in the property management. Yeah. 'Cause they did training.
Sure.
So I feel like with that background, it really did help me build a good rapport with those people that would come in. Yeah. My first open house, I had like 42 people. It was over 40 people. I was exhausted.
Yeah. Can you talk to us about, because like I've had success with open houses and I did a lot in my first year and a half or so.
Yeah.
But you were talking about some crazy numbers.
Yeah, I got 2 buyers out of that first open house.
Wow.
Yeah, and I still talk to those buyers.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But you were getting so many numbers to show up. So take us through real quick in like 2 to 3 minutes of like how you got so many people showing up at your open houses.
Okay, so the first thing I did was I went into the MLS and I did a search in the area that I was more of an expert, because basically the area that I lived in, because I knew everything. I knew the HEB, I knew the churches around the area. That was my area.
Yep.
So what I did was, before I even emailed the listing agent, I went into the MLS map and I did a search, and I did like a 1 or 2 mile radius, and I did like your average sales. At that time, I did like 250.
Mm-hmm.
That was a decent price point.
Right.
And then I did only listings that were 3 to 4 days old, like no more than 7 days.
Yep.
So then I looked at, once those listings came up, I went through each, and I did this on Mondays. Yeah. I went through each listing to see where exactly they were, because I wanted to make sure that there were at least a minimum of 2 busy intersections, 2 busy roads. And the areas that I selected, which was like Vance Jackson and Wurzbach and I-10, like kind of by the Colonnade area. And so I actually had 3 busy streets that I could put my marketing signs on.
Yep.
So I picked like 3 or 4 listings that were in that area, and I'd email the listing agent. I emailed them all the same thing. I was like, hey, I would love to do an open house at your beautiful listing. I drive a ton of traffic. I'm going to market your property. Is it okay if I use your photos? And I'm like, somebody's going to say yes, you know? So I'd email all the same thing, copy and paste. And so 2 or 3 would respond. And I'm like, I already committed. I got a response from somebody else, but I can do yours the following weekend,
Right.
So I was kind of like building it up for the following week as well, in case somebody said yes. So that's how I did it.
Yeah.
And then I had all those signs. So the more signs, I thought about it. I was like, there's a church down the street. Mm-hmm. And I looked at when service ended, because buyers go to church too, So I would do it on Saturdays and Sundays.
Okay.
And so I would do it more like between 1 and 3.
Same house for Saturday and Sunday.
And I would put the sign out there on the main road.
Yep.
Open house. Like if it was a 4-bedroom, I would put 4-bedroom, 2-bath, recently renovated, little points that would grab somebody's attention, especially because 4 bedrooms are a little bit more rare. But I would put the open house time. I would leave it there. And so people would, they would wait. Like people actually, they will wait and they'll put it on their calendar.
Yeah.
And so then the day of the open house, I would put a ton of the directional signs that direct you to the open house. I would never put the address.
Right.
Because nobody's going to take the time to put it in their GPS. They want it convenient. They want to just follow the arrows. And of course I put the balloons.
Easy to get to.
Yep. So that's what I did. And I would say it took, you have to start like an hour early before you start your open house.
It's so refreshing to hear all this, because it's a lot of the stuff that I was taught and that I did. and I was pretty successful. I mean, your numbers were outrageous. I don't know if I ever had.
It comes down, honestly, location and price point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and I there's a podcast, I don't remember which number it is, but I talk about why you should do open houses and how to do them, you know?
Yeah. And that's what I did all the time, and it worked. And my first open house, I always had a lender with me. And the first guy that went with me, he was actually my lender when we bought our house at that time. And he was so exhausted. He's like, I've never been to an open house. He was giving tours, you know, and he was, you know, passing his information. I felt like I worked an 8-hour job because of all the talking I did. Yeah. And it was only like 3 hours.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that that was my very first one. And I took it back to my broker, and they were like, oh my God, that's amazing. Right. And back then they were like, 6 is good. You know, if you have 6 people, that's great. That's a successful open house. And I came back and I was like, it was like 42 people. And at that time I had like a paper sign-in sheet.
It was hard to read.
So it was so hard to read. And so, of course, when you go through certain things, you learn and you try something new. And so they had an open house app, and I had this big tablet, and I had it at the table. Yeah. So the next open house I did, I put that app, and I put photos, and I asked the questions I wanted it to ask. And I got so many more accurate emails and phone numbers.
Yeah. I learned that very quickly.
So,
I mean, sometimes it's just like, you do something and you learn from it. Yeah. You know, and it's like, don't be afraid to do something. Right. Don't overthink it. Just go out there.
Just do it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah. I got my license on July 4th of 2019. And whatever that Saturday was, very next Saturday, I was doing an open house. Because I had already put in my mind, I'm going to do open houses. Yeah. You know, and did I get a buyer from it? Probably not. I don't think I did. Yeah. My second one was terrible, but again, it was bad location. Yeah. And I was like, okay, let's pick a big location.
Key. Yeah, location is key. Honestly, and I think at that time, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos. You know, I think I went on YouTube, and open house tips is a search that I did, and I started to get ideas. And one of the ideas was signs. Make it easy for your prospects to find you, you know?
For sure.
Yeah. And so I took a lot of little nuggets from those videos, and I implemented it, and it worked. Cool. Yeah. So that's what I would tell you guys to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So you went over to Realty of San Antonio for a little bit, and now you're at EXP. Talk to us a little bit about, you know, what brought you to EXP. What do you like about it?
Oh, I love, you know, the culture at EXP is great. You know, you meet so many people. Everywhere you go, there's an I call them like EXP brothers and EXP sisters. Whenever I get like an offer on one of my listings, I'm like, hey, sister, or hey, brother. And people laugh, you know, but I just love the culture. Everybody's so welcoming, and, you know, I don't know everybody, you know, there's so many, but when there's events, you know, they're amazing because you have the vibe, you know,
going
the vibes
to build?
There. I want to.
Yeah.
I really want to.
We need to get our tickets. Yeah. Because build, excuse me. Did I say bold?
Bold. I've done bold.
Build is going to be here at the JW Marriott, and it's going to be amazing.
I really want to go.
I went up to the one in Dallas 2 years ago, and Tony Robbins was speaking. Oh,
I did see that. I saw that. Cool. I was so jelly. I was like, oh my God, I wish I would have gone.
But all the presenters, like, no matter who it is, the energy and the vibe. They
always have good stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
They know how to take care of the agents.
And then we're going to make sure that we try to get out to what is it? EXPCon in November.
Yes, we have to. I haven't gone. Yeah. We have to.
All right, we'll make it happen.
Okay, we're going to have to hold each other accountable.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about how you got started. What does your business look like nowadays? You know, you've been in the business 7 years, and it's cool. Like, I've been in it 4 years, and I'm already starting to see a little bit of, well, not a little bit, but like growth of just like referral.
Yes.
People mention things.
It's gotten easier in terms of my business growing. The work never gets easier, but the business part, I feel like I don't have to work as hard now to generate the business. Yeah. And sometimes I feel guilty in a way, like I feel like I'm not doing enough, but at the same time, I'm comfortable. All my business is referral based. I don't pay for leads. I've been thinking about paying for leads, but at the same time, you know, it's like, I don't know, you know, everybody always has like, should I do it or should I not do it? Yeah. There's so many different companies out there that have leads and stuff, but a lot of my past clients, Facebook, I get a lot of referrals from Facebook.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like even today, I didn't really post much last week just because I was busy or whatever. I forgot, but I posted like a property of the day today.
Yeah.
And then like people see it. A neighbor of mine commented on it.
Oh, your
does
neighbor.
does that mean that she needs to buy or sell? Probably not.
No.
But she's interested in it, and she knows I'm in real estate.
Right.
That's all that matters right now.
Right.
Because when she thinks about it, she goes, "Oh, my neighbor's a realtor."
Yeah.
And he's
if an opportunity where they ask her, a realtor, like, "Hey, my neighbor."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's super powerful, and it is cool because every time I've done that, I feel like my business has grown year over year, but I feel like I'm working less.
Right.
And it's kind of bizarre.
I feel guilty, like I'm not doing enough or something, but I work so hard.
But there's also some balance that we talk about.
Yes.
It's like we're all about working, we're all about putting the time, but I think a lot of newer agents don't understand that you got to put in quite a bit of work.
Oh my gosh,
at the
yes.
beginning.
In the beginning, I worked my butt off. I didn't have free weekends.
Yeah.
I used to door knock when I did Bold.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the first time I did Bold, I came home and my husband was like, "Oh my gosh, who's this girl?" I like this side of Madi. And I was like doing all kinds of stuff that was definitely out of my comfort zone. I was door knocking, and I actually got a listing from door knocking.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was your strategy behind door knocking? I've only door knocked. The only time I really door knocked was when I had an open house and I posted up my signs in the morning. I drive up to my open house to get ready. All of my signs were gone.
What?
All of them were gone. Somebody either stole them. I think like maybe
It's probably another realtor.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to your open house.
Yeah, it was weird. And I was like, well, shit, I got to do the open house. So I was like, the only way I could get anybody here is knock on some doors.
Yeah.
I actually picked up a renter. He's currently renting a house and he wants to buy, so it's like, hey, it worked,
Yeah. In the beginning too, I was like, why do I want the neighbors to come? That was like my mindset. And I had gone to a class. I can't even remember whose class it was, but they were like, don't think like that because those neighbors could be future sellers.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you're right.
Yeah. That's happened to me just recently.
You never know. Like, yeah, I used to do the whole street on the actual main street and across the street from the listing, and then I do a couple houses like behind it, And so I try to get at least like 20 houses.
So most of your door knocking was with the purpose of around your open house.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like random, I'm going to go knock on
I
this.
did do that a couple of times. I just went to random neighborhoods because I actually used to do apartments. I would go on the weekends and I would try to find buyers because buyers were always easier, in the beginning. And so I just had like a little thing, like a notebook. Honestly, I just had a notebook and I wrote down my questions, and it was 4 questions.
Yeah.
And I'd knock on each one and I'm like, hey, I'm doing a survey and I'm just trying to find out the statistics on why people buy versus why people rent versus buying. And I just have 4 questions if you can help me out really quick. And they're like, yeah, sure, go ahead. I'm like, okay, why did you choose to rent here? And at the same time, I'm kind of like pre-qualifying them. Like, what kind of job do they have? Or, why are they here? And they're like, oh, I worked on the street. Like, oh, where do you work? I work at Chase. Oh, okay. And I'm writing it down. And it's like, okay, so why did you decide to rent? And they're like, oh, it's convenient. No long-term commitment. I don't have to worry about maintenance. Those were like the common answers. And then I'm like, what's the downside of renting? And they're like, oh, the parking sucks. And I was like, okay, that's a big one. And they talk about like, oh, you're just throwing your money down the drain. A lot of people would say that. And so then when they started talking about all the negative stuff, and I'm like, well, how much you pay here? And they're like, oh, I pay like $1,400-$1,500 a month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a house. As I do the math, I'm like, you multiply that by 12. How long have you been renting? And they're like, 4 years. And I do the math and they're like, I'm really throwing my money down the drain. And I'm like, you can buy for $1,400-$1,500 a month. You could buy a house for this amount.
Yep. And
then I explained to them like, I'm like, do you know what equity is? And they're like, no. And I'm like, I'm explaining all of that. And they're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, you see, that's why I'm here. I was like, because nobody taught me that when I was living in an apartment.
Yep.
And the more I know you're probably not wanting to buy right now, but at least And I'm like, there's programs that will help you with assistance on down payment. It doesn't have to be 20% down. So I'd build that rapport with them, and I'd write their apartment number down.
Yeah.
And I'd send them a thank you card for helping me out. And so I would get emails from them.
Yeah, I remember you talking about this about a week ago. And I was like, pretty brilliant.
Yeah, I would get a lot of buyers, but then I started getting so busy and I didn't follow up with them.
It makes me want to like go knock on some doors.
Right?
I'm like, hey, that sounds pretty doable.
I would do it after the office would close.
Yeah, we need to go to the nice apartments that are inside.
Yes, the high end where it's all AC, you're not breaking a sweat. Yeah.
Especially with this temperature right now. Good Lord, it's getting hot.
Yeah. So that's how I did it. I just asked them if they can help me, and they were all like, yeah, sure. Or some of them were like, no, I can't right now. You know? But yeah.
I like that.
And if you're consistent, I'm sure you can get a few buyers.
For sure. You know, and it really just takes one. I love this quote from Pat Hayes, I think. You know, you're one phone call away from changing your life.
Yes, that's so true.
You know? And it's just like you're one client away from who does that client know that knows this person, you know,
right.
or whatever it is. Or you bring an agent in or whatever it is.
Yeah. I think honestly, it just really comes down to your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're, some people go in with like, oh, I didn't get any buyers. I didn't get any good leads. No, you didn't, but you met a lot of great people.
Mm-hmm.
You build, this is the business where you're building relationships.
Yeah, for sure.
If you want to get into that referral based business, it's relationship building. That's what I've learned.
Yeah.
Over the years.
I mean, yes, I did even if I do an open house and get like 4 people sign in, I added 4 people to my database.
Right. It's 4 more people you didn't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, they're not necessarily ready to buy right now, but you know, put them in my email campaign, whatever it is, add them to social media. They see what I do.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this guy.
I feel like honestly too, when you're building rapport with people, even if it's with open houses, I always try to give something of value. Like those people that were renting and I taught them that little bit of the information and they were just like, oh my gosh, you know?
It blows me away that what people don't know.
Right.
But then again, I was that person too.
Like they know, but they don't.
I didn't know any of this.
Right. But but by breaking it down for them like that, where they realize, like I really am throwing money away, you know, and it makes them, it gets the wheels turning, you know?
For sure. For sure.
So that I would have people that would reach out to me like that following week. Hey, what was that program you were talking about? Like some of those people that I had spoken with, and I'd send it, and some of them didn't get approved, but
if you get more leads like that and you just get busy, I know somebody that can handle those referrals.
I know a guy that can take it.
Yeah,
someone that has a very similar personality.
Yeah, let's do that. Just referral based.
Yes.
So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So so you're here at EXP. What does your future look like? You know, you mentioned your friend saying that you should start a team.
Yeah.
What does your next step in real estate look like?
I don't know yet, honestly.
Yeah.
I haven't really. Me really is. I want to continue to grow.
Right.
You know, and I honestly want to be the best version of myself before I even consider.
Yeah.
Starting a team.
Yeah.
You know, because I have some bad habits that I need to break myself, and I cannot be a team leader.
I like that.
You know what I mean? I can't be a team leader if I'm not committing to myself I'm breaking my own promises on certain things. You know what I mean? So I feel like I'm not there yet.
Yeah, that's good.
It's true.
It's good
like
that
brutal
recognize
honesty. I'm like, oh, so embarrassed. Don't judge me, guys.
Oh, well, I'm the same way. You know, sometimes I mention it on the podcast and Shane's like, you shouldn't be saying things like that. It's like, no, it's just, I understand who I am, where I'm at and where I want to be. And some things that I need to continue to grow.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
I'm a big believer of when the time is right.
Yeah.
I feel like I always take an opportunity, like when you invited me on the podcast, I was like, yep. I always say yes to everything. I mean, I feel like that's why I'm here.
Yep.
Because Shanae brought me that pamphlet and said you should try it. And I was like, all right. The girl, when I was working at the Limited, she said I should work for her company. And I said, okay. And, you know, so I've just, every opportunity given, I've just said, okay, like, what do I have to lose?
Yeah. And you figure it out.
You'll figure it out. Exactly. I'm not, if I don't know anything, I'll learn.
Yeah.
You'll learn, just get your feet wet, go in there and do it, you know?
For sure. And I mean, that's what's awesome about this community in real estate is it's funny when I talk to somebody on the outside, they're like, yeah, but it's just so competitive. So I've never personally, now I've only been at EXP for 4 years. That's my whole real estate career. I've never felt the competition. Now, I don't necessarily do cold calling and stuff like that or go on listing appointments that I don't know who they are or referral. It's just like, and what blows me away is like you coming on the podcast and sharing. You know, everybody shares like, this is what I did. This is what works. This is how you do it.
There's no secrets. You just have to
put the work in. You just got to put in the time.
And I tell people all the time when they get their license, I'm like, it's hard.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's so many people that tell you no, there's so much to learn. Like, you're starting a business.
Yep.
And some people have that mentality like, oh, the market's booming, I'm going to sell all these houses. And they come in and it's like, wait a minute. And I'm like, do you know what we had to do to get here? Like, you know, so I always just tell people, you know, do what you can, stay consistent, keep doing it, and change your mindset.
Honestly, that's a perfect way to wrap up this podcast because like what she just said, exactly, you know, you're going to hit bumps in the road. You know, you just got to keep going. You have to learn from it.
That's how you learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've lost deals. I'm sure you've lost deals.
Yeah,
I was just talking to a client that's like, man, I was talking to this guy. I was talking to an agent. It's like, I was talking to this guy and then, you know, he went some other direction. It's like, yeah, that's happened to me too. It's going to happen.
It happens to everybody.
As long as you learn from that and you're like, what could I have done
differently?
Better and differently?
Right.
You know, then you're going to grow.
And that's how successful people learn and they grow is, you know, how are you going to learn if you don't, you know, if you don't fall back or fail a little bit, and it's not necessarily failing, but yeah, that's what it really just mindset.
Those are the takeaways, guys.
Yep.
So hopefully you jot that down, you make a note of that. That was some amazing information that you shared.
Thank you.
I appreciate, you know, talking about the door knocking, talking about the open houses, talking about the grind.
The apartment community is going to be like, Marisela, all these realtors knocking on our doors.
Yeah. Well, we'll just keep that to us and you guys that are listening.
After hours, guys.
So if anybody wants to reach out to you, have any questions for you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
You can call me. You can reach me on Facebook. Actually, my Facebook is Marisela Delgado if you're trying to search me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm everywhere. Nice. I don't know if you want me to give my number out to everybody or are you going to put it in a link somewhere, but
I could put it in the link.
All right.
Or you could say it, whatever you want, whatever you feel comfortable with.
210-279-4086 is my direct cell. So you guys, if you have any questions, you need pointers or tips or whatever, I'm an open book.
Sounds great. You were awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I loved it.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. I hope you enjoyed the show, guys. You know, got something out of it. If you did, if you're friends in real estate and like could use some help, share the show with them. All right. Drop us a review, give us a rating. That really helps us grow the show and impact others like you. Join our private Facebook group called The Productive Agent, and you can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And we thank you for joining us today. Now let's get out there and go produce.
Bye.